So to continue with our power rule, we're going to look at how to use the power rule for a negative power of x. And this will happen whenever we have a number over x in the denominator. And so the numerator has to just be a number. There cannot be a variable in the numerator for this technique. Or if there is a variable, then you first need to, if you can, simplify the x's and then you can move it to the numerator. And it also just has to be a single term in the denominator. So you can't have like x plus 2 in the denominator and then do this technique. It would be a little bit different. It's just for when it's one term in the denominator. Okay, so it's like x squared, 4x to the fourth, x to the negative fifth. So what we do for this problem is we are going to move the variable to the numerator. And we're going to use our exponent rules from pre-calculus. So I'm going to leave the a over b, that's my coefficient, and I move the x up to the numerator by making it a negative exponent. That's an exponent rule from pre-calculus. And you can also write it as like f prime of x equals a x to the negative n over b. Either way is fine, but a over b is just the coefficient in front, and then it becomes x to the negative n. So for this first one, if we do this f of x, okay, again, this is x to the first when we don't write it. So this would become 1x to the negative first, okay? Or just we could rewrite it as x to the negative first because we don't usually write the 1. So we first rewrite the original function, and this is still my f of x. I didn't take the derivative. I didn't use the rule we learned. So once I move the variable to the numerator, now I can use the derivative rule where I bring the coefficient, or sorry, the exponent down to the coefficient. So I make a negative 1x. And then again, a lot of students make a mistake with this. Just be careful when you're subtracting. Negative 1 minus 1 is x to the negative second. And then if you want to rewrite it without the negative exponent, we would leave the negative 1 in the numerator and we would put it over x squared. You only move the variable with a negative exponent. You don't move a negative number. And so we'll use that same idea for all of these. So like for number 2, we would rewrite our original function first. Okay, you can't just do the power rule in the denominator. That's not how that rule works. The rule works only if the variable is in the numerator. So that's why we're changing it. So this becomes 1x to the negative second, or again, you can just write x to the negative second, and then we are going to take the derivative. So f prime of x is equal to, we bring down the negative 2x, and then we do negative 2 minus 1. And that gives me negative 2x to the negative third. And then 3 is the same thing. We first rewrite f of x. Now I'm going to leave like the 3 over 4. That's my coefficient in front. And I'm going to move the x to the fourth to the numerator. And so I have x to the negative 4. And again, you can put it all over 4. Or you can write it like this. It's the same thing. And then when I take the derivative, I'm going to leave the 3 over 4 there. And I'm going to multiply it by the derivative of x to the negative fourth. So we're going to bring down the negative 4x, and then we're going to subtract 1 from that exponent. In this case, the 4 and negative 4 cancel, they reduce. So I get just a negative 3 because I still have this negative sign, and then x to the negative fifth. And if I'm moving it, the negative 3 stays there. That does not have a negative exponent. And I move the x to the denominator and it becomes a positive 5. And then the last one for number 4 is I have a negative exponent. So if I move that to the numerator, it actually becomes positive. We always change the sign when we move it to the numerator. So when it's positive, it becomes negative when we move it to the numerator. When it's negative, we move it to positive, and then we can just take our derivative. Again, the 2 is there, and we multiply it by whatever the derivative of x to the 5th, which is 5x to the 4th. Okay, again, you bring the 5 down and you subtract 1 from the numerator. Okay. And that gives me 10x to the 4th. Okay, so that's how you do the derivative when you have a single variable in the denominator.